I'm Bon Angeli Palimique, CPA, and welcome to my channel.
Hi! So, as discussed in the previous video, ang joint arrangement ay may two classifications. Meron tayong joint operations and joint venture. So today, makikita natin or ma-discuss natin kung paano natin ma-differentiate yung dalawang classifications. Okay. So, ang key distinction nila is yung rights and obligation ng parties. So, ito yung nagsasabi kung paano mo ma-assess kung joint ops ba o joint venture. Then, to assess that, ito yung mga considerations na kailangan mo. Kailangan mong tignan yung structure ng joint arrangement. So, titignan mo kung meron bang ginawang separate vehicle or wala. Then, kapag merong separate vehicle, titignan mo naman yung legal form na itong separate vehicle. Titignan mo yung terms agreed by the parties and other facts and circumstances. So later on, mag-discuss natin, ano ba yung separate vehicle? Kailan ba magiging joint operation? Kailan magiging joint venture? Okay. So, ang joint operation is a joint arrangement. So, classification siya ni joint arrangement. Wherein, yung joint control, yung dalawang parties or more, is meron silang right sa assets, obligations, and normally, hindi sila gumagawa ng separate vehicle or separate entity. Separate vehicle kasi, di ba, yung parang gagawa ka ng separate entity. So, pag joint operations lang, hindi na sila gumagawa ng ganon. So, automatic yan. Kapag hindi nagawa ng separate vehicle ang isang joint arrangement, isa na tong joint operations. And also, kailangan mo talagang i-check is kung meron ba silang right sa assets. Let's say, kapag yung land nila, pagmamayari ba ng mga joint operators or hindi. Kumbaga parang, let's say si company A, company B, gumawa sila ng company C. Yung lahat na assets and liabilities nito, kanila din. Kumbaga parang, meron silang right dito sa assets na to. And kapag may utang yung ginawa nilang entity C, sila magbabayad. Joint operations yun. Pero, kapag itong entity C, kapag meron siyang utang hanggang entity C lang or parang limited to the parang shareholder lang, yun yung joint venture na di-discuss natin later on. So, may mga samples ako dito about joint operations. So, kanyari, A and B decide to enter into a joint operation to produce a new product. A undertakes a manufacture, so may business daw siya, and B undertakes the another. And A and B have agreed that decisions regarding the joint operation will be made unanimously. So, may dito pa lang, alam mo na, may joint control. And that each will bear their own expenses and take an agreed share of the sales revenue from the product. So, ibig sabihin, meron silang, kumbaga, shared na rights, hindi lang dun sa net income or hindi lang sa net assets, kundi sa buong, dun sa entity na ginawa nila na joint operation. Tapos, dun mapapansin mo dun, hindi din siya nagbanggit na may separate vehicle. Next. A joint operator manufactures part of a product. A second joint operator completes. So, ito ako taga-manufacture, ikaw taga-complete, tapos ikaw taga-market. So, may tatlong joint operator. May kita nyo, hindi sila nag-establish pa ng new entity, pero joint operator sila nung product na pinoproduce nila. Revenue and expenses are shared in accordance with the joint arrangement agreement. So, isa tong joint operations. Next example, some joint operations involve the establishment. So, hindi naman kasi, porket walang separate entity, is hindi siya joint operations. Ang sinasabi natin, kapag walang separate entity, always joint operation. Pero ang joint operation, pwede rin siya mag-fall dito sa may separate entity. Okay? So, pwede siyang mag-establish din ng corporation, partnership. So, dun nagugulo. Kapag may separate entity, kailangan mo nang hatiin kung joint ops ba siya o joint venture. Okay. An example of this type of agreement is an oil pipeline. The operators may contribute assets to the separate legal entity for the construction of the pipeline. So, may gagawin silang pipeline. Gumawa sila ng isang kumpanya kung saan dun sila mag-contribute ng assets. Tapos, once the pipeline is completed, magiging jointly owned siya ng operators who share the cost. Kumbaga, magiging kanila yun eh. Mayroon silang right sa assets, which is yun yung joint operations. Okay, so let's now differentiate it with joint venture. So unlike with joint operations, ang joint operations is right to the assets, obligations to the liabilities, Si joint venture, ang right niya is a net asset. Para siyang shareholder na ang right lang niya is yung net impact, kumbaga ganun. Yun dun lang siya sa, nagkikare dun sa equity part mo na. Hindi siya kailangan magbayad ng utang ng arrangement. Tapos, limited lang yung exposure niya dun sa ininvest niya. Para siyang isang shareholder lang din si joint venture. Ang tawag naman sa kanila is joint venturers. So, wala silang rights over the individual assets. So, let's say, may building yung arrangement. Hindi yun sa'yo. Yun yung rule. Hindi yun sa'yo. Unlike kay joint operator, sa kanila yun. Tapos wala siyang obligations toward the individual lives of the joint venture. Instead, like shareholders of a corporation, joint venturers have rights only over the net assets of the joint venture. Note that in case of a two-party joint venture, it is not necessarily that the joint venturers must have equal stake. So, hindi daw kailangan equal yung sharing nila to have a joint control. Kasi 'di ba ang joint control is substance over form. Kumbaga, kung hindi man equal yung stake nyo, pero kayong dalawa is needed to have a unanimous decision dun sa transactions ng company, ibig sabihin may joint control kayo. So take note, yun lang yung malaking pinakaiba nila. It's about the rights, kung saan sila may rights. Si joint operations, may rights sa assets and liabilities. Si joint venture, may rights sa net assets. So here are also mga examples ng joint venture. So one joint venturer may hold a 60%. So may 60% siyang pagmamayari. Si isa naman, 40%. The joint venture is established as long as the contractual agreements provide for both joint venturers to have joint control. So let's say, yung agreement is dapat 70% yung kailangan para makapag-decide. So dun sa nasample natin sa joint control, pwede pa rin silang magkaroon ng joint control kasi kailangan silang dalawa magkaroon ng unanimous decision para mag-go ang isang transaction. Next, A and B decide to set up a separate party. C enter into a joint venture. A will own 55% of the equity capital of C, will be owning the remaining 45%. A and B have agreed on decision making regarding the joint venture will be unanimous. So neither party will have direct rights. Yun yung joint venture. Wala silang direct rights sa assets or direct obligation to the parties. Instead, they will have an interest in the net assets. Yun lang naman yun eh. May interest sila sa net assets. So kung naguguluhan ka na, tandaan mo lang yung pinakaiba nila, rights to assets and obligations and right to net assets, the joint venture. Okay. Sa pang-sample, kunyari si A, si B, and si C, nag-establish sila ng new entity. Tinawag nilang D. So si A daw, 50% yung voting right niya doon, si B, 30%, si C, 20%. So ang agreement nila is at least 75 of the voting rights make decisions about the activities of entity D. So kung makikita mo, kung 75, hindi nila magagawa ng dalawa lang eh, 50, 80. Ito, pwede, si A and B, pwede nilang magawa yung 75, pero si A and B, hindi nila magagawa. So ibig sabihin, si A and B ay meron silang joint control. A does not control the arrangement. So, hindi siya solely nagko-control. Si 50% lang siya. And it needs B. Ibig sabihin, A and B have joint control. So, if you have listened to the part 1 neto, diba? Doon natin na-establish sino ang may joint control. Yung kayang pag pinagsama mo sila, magkakaroon na ng unanimous decision. And also, dapat hindi multiple combinations. Dapat isa lang. Isang combination lang within the joint arrangement. Kasi yung decision nga daw nilang dalawa, kahit anong pagdesisyonan nila, pag magkasama sila, meron silang joint control. In the consolidated financial statements of the A group, they would be treated as joint venture. This is because it is a separate entity which A has joint control. The joint venture will be accounted for using the equity method. Okay, so later on dito, may discussion ako about anong method na magagamitin ko pag alam ko na kung joint ops o joint venture. Ayan. Nandito na tayo sa accounting treatment. So, yung accounting treatment depends kung ano yung nila, classification. The classification is determined, sabi natin, depends on rights and obligations. Okay. Yung separate vehicle na kanina pa natin na-mention is, ito yung sinasabi natin, merong new entity na ginawa. So, regardless of whether or not these entities have a legal personality. Yan. So, ito na yung structure of joint arrangement. So, noona, in part 1, diniscuss natin nasan si joint arrangement dun sa bigger picture. This time around, dinidiscuss na natin in detail ano yung classification ni joint venture and paano yung magiging treatment dito sa dalawang classification na to. Okay. So, let's say yung joint arrangement is merong not structured through a separate vehicle. Kumbaga, hindi siya gumawa ng new company, hindi na siya gumawa ng another entity. These parties have joint operations. Kasi sabi ko, clearly, kapag hindi yan structured through a separate vehicle, joint operations yan. Kasi ang joint venture, kailangan merong separate vehicle. Pero, ayan, kunyari, kung structured through separate vehicle, doon mo natitignan yung legal terms, yung substance. Kung itong separate vehicle ba na to is joint ops or joint venture. So, to assess that, kailangan mo tignan yung legal form, titignan mo yung terms of the contractual agreement, and other facts and circumstances. So, kailangan mo yung assess, meron ba silang rights sa asset and liab, or meron lang silang rights to net assets. So, kung meron silang rights to asset and liab, joint operation. Kung may rights sa net asset, joint venture. So, next, ano magiging accounting treatment ko kapag alam ko lang? So, kapag joint operation, it accounts for assets. So, as usual, dahil meron kang rights sa asset, lahat yun i-account mo. Assets, liabs, and corresponding revenue and expenses. Pero, kapag joint venture lang, ang treatment natin is accounting for investment in accordance with equity method past 28. Okay, so yun yung pinagkaiba nila. So, on the third video, dito sa next video ko, i-discuss naman natin yung accounting for joint operations. Then, on the fourth, yung accounting for joint venture. Yan. So, ito yung contractual terms or summary ng mga pinagdi-discuss natin. Sabi natin, pag joint operations, right to assets and obligation, joint venture, right to net asset. Ang dating sa right to asset, share of all interest. Merong rights, title, and ownership si joint operators. Kay joint venturers, wala. Kasi yung asset ay pagmamayari ng separate vehicle na ginawa nila and hindi ng mga venturers. Pagdating sa obligations, sharing sila, kanila lahat, meron silang obligation to liability si joint operators. Si joint venturers is liable only to the extent of their investment kasi para silang shareholders. As to revenue, expenses, profit, and loss, the allocation is based on the performance of each party. Meanwhile, for joint venture, it depends on the contractual agreement established each party share in the profit or losses. So that's all for this discussion. So watch out for the part 3 for the accounting for joint operations and part 4 for the joint venture. So thank you so much and hope you learned today.